So this is a lot release request, and what they would do is they would capture, firstly they would elect to create a lot release. They would capture the batch number, and they would capture the product name. Okay. Let's call it tabs. They would click submit. They would confirm. And what the system would then do is it would come back to them and say, right, the cost of that lot release is that amount of money over there. It tells them the account into which to pay that money. It gives them the reference number to use when they do their EFT, and it provides them with basically the context in terms of what the rules are, the rules of engagement. The very first step, the applicant needs to attach supporting documentation, so they would attach the application form. Let's go and find my attachments. Okay, they would attach the supporting document zip. Okay, they would attach proof of payment, and they would click the submit button. They would then confirm their intentions, and now we're in the next stage of the process, which is the submission screening stage. You can see that we're now with SAPRA. Those first two steps were with the applicant. We're now with SAPRA. Again, the instructions are in place, and the alternative, the two options are, in terms of the screening submission, is one could either pass it or fail it. Let's assume that we fail it. Okay, we type in our reason for that failure. We would potentially select our screening report. We click fail. We confirm, and now that task is back with the industry for the resubmission of their lot release. Okay, so the industry folks then make whatever corrections are necessary. They then attach their attachments. They click submit, and the task is now going back for submission screening. This time, assume that submission screening is a success. So we upload our screening report, and we click pass. We confirm, and what the system then does is it says to the applicant, right, you may now ship the requisite samples to the following address. It provides the address to which the samples need to be shipped, and it provides the reference number that the goods needs that need to accompany the shipment, so that it's easy for us to link the incoming samples with this particular task. You'll notice that this task over here, this is now sitting with the industry. So what the industry does is they then prepare that shipment. When the shipment is made, they would, for example, then record details in terms of who they are shipping the goods with. Okay. Okay. And they click the done button. They click finish. Where we are now is that the task is with the NCL folks, and their objective is to acknowledge receipt. So the NCL guys can look at all of the tasks that are in the status of acknowledged receipt, and they then know what they're expecting to receive. Obviously, once they do receive those goods, what they need to do is they have one of two options. If the goods are received in good order, they would click the good order button. If the goods were, for example, received damaged, or there'd been an excursion, a temperature excursion of some sort, they would then simply record details of that. I'm going to assume that we're going to call for new samples. right? So they would type in what had gone wrong up there. They would click the new samples button. This is now the NCL, folks. They would confirm. And now if you look at it, we're back with the industry, and the industry needs to send new samples. And once again, we provide the industry person with the instructions, all the way down to what reference number to use with the shipment. Okay, so this again, they're now doing a second shipment. Okay, they click done, they click finish, and that task has gone back into acknowledge receipt with the NCL team. This time we're going to assume that the goods were received in good order. So they click the good order button, they click finish. Okay, so far, folks, are there any questions? Okay, I'd assume I'm hitting this one square then. So now what we have is the NCL team need to do the lot testing. This is the actual science of the whole show. They have one of three scenarios. They can either call for new samples, or they can call for additional information, or they can click the done button. The new samples route we've already had a look at. What happens then is it goes back to the applicants, tell them that there's been a temperature excursion or whatever the case may be, and we ask for new samples. The information required route is very similar, where it goes back to the applicant, we tell them what information is required, they submit that information, we come back in at this step. So I'm going to presume that in this particular case, because those two routes are fairly familiar to us, I'm going to assume that all is good. Okay. Click the done. They would then attach the NCL report. Okay. If there was any additional supporting documentation they wish to attach, they could do so, but they have to attach at least the NCL report. They click the done button. They click finish. And now what we have is we have the task sitting with SAPRA. So if you look at this particular task type, it's actually tying together three separate communities. It's tying together the industry person that's submitting the lot release request. It's tying in the NCL team, and it's also tying in, obviously, the SAPRA team. So now the SAPRA folks, they've got a task. They need to process the report. Okay, so that report that was created by the NCL team during the lot testing phase, SAPRA now need to process it. And there's one of three options. They can either send this task back to the NCL team if they need additional information or if they have queries regarding the report, or they can declare that the goods have failed. There's a problem with the goods. In other words, the report is a failure. The lot can't be released, and they can instruct that the goods are destructed. Okay, or they can declare that the goods are good and they don't need to be destroyed. Okay, so far you guys comfortable? Okay, so in the process of doing so, what would happen is an outcome review would be attached. Okay, and a certificate of failure notice would be attached. Okay, and then for purposes of revenue recognition, they would determine the date upon which those documents became effective. Let's 14/20. Okay, and they would then click, for example, the no destruction button. Sorry guys. Okay, no destruction. Click finish. And what then happens is the task is now back with the applicants, okay, with the industry applicants. And what we're asking the industry applicants to do is to acknowledge the fact that they've received the report. In this particular case, because we didn't call for any destruction, we're not asking for any proof of destruction. But if we'd called for the destruction of the goods, the applicant would need to upload a certificate of destruction or whatever, of whatever sort. Okay, but in this particular case, we just acknowledge receipts. We acknowledge. Okay, we acknowledge again. And what we now have is we have a completed task. Okay, so the entire process obviously can be mapped out. We can see every step in the process, when it started, when it stopped, who was looking at it, and all those good things.